opportunities in the recognition of qualifications in higher education, where we will present to you some global perspectives from selected experts in recognition across the world. I am Helene Peterbauer. I'm a policy analyst at the European University Association based in Brussels, Belgium. And I will be having the pleasure today of hosting you through the webinar over the next hour. A few practical housekeeping remarks before we get started. I would like to remind you that there is a chat function, which you probably have discovered already, and which you may use for comments, for greetings from your part of the world, but please also use the chat function to pose your questions to the experts today. This is an interactive webinar. You are very much encouraged to ask questions and to share your own experiences and insights, so please do use the chat function. Also, very important, if this is of importance to you and if it helps you, we have an interpretation function in this webinar. And if you go under the lower bar, under the more sign with the 3 dots, you will find an interpretation function. This is a webinar that is available both in English and in Chinese. So if you do want to make use of this function, you will find it there. This is it in terms of the practical remarks. As usual, this webinar is of course also recorded, so you can later on rewatch some scenes or share it with your colleagues or friends if they are interested in the topic. First of all, I would like to hand over the floor to Mr. Zhang Daliang, who is the Vice President of the China Association of Higher Education and the chair of the body that is organizing this webinar, which is the Global Universities Associations Forum. CAHE, or the China Association of Higher Education, is currently heading the Global Universities Associations Forum, or GUAF in short. So please, I hand over the floor, Mr. Daliang, for your welcome remarks to the audience today.
大家好，有声音吗？有。好，很高兴与大家共同参加本次网络研讨会。首先，我谨代表中国高等教育协会和第3届大学联合会全球论坛向与会的各位专家学者表示诚挚的问候和热烈的欢迎。向拉丁美洲和加勒比高等教育中心、欧洲大学协会等组织为本次网络研讨会所做的精心安排表示衷心的感谢。2022年，在西班牙巴塞罗那召开了第1次大学联合会全球论坛。在这次论坛上，我们围绕国际流动性与学历互认优先事项议题成立了联合行动小组。这个小组是由拉丁美洲和加勒比高等教育中心担任组长，欧洲大学协会、非洲大学协会和阿拉伯大学协会为成员，共同承担起草了大学联合会全球论坛关于联合国教科文组织承认高等教育相关资历全球公约联合声明的相关工作。其他成员协同开展了相关的工作。经过2年的工作，联合行动小组成员共同完成了声明的起草工作，并于今年4月在 GUAF 官网上正式发布。声明强调了承认高等教育相关资历全球公约的重要性，同时呼吁各组织成员共同努力来推动公约的实施，促进全球范围内实现高等教育学历互认的公平性和透明度。本次研讨会的主题是高等教育学历互认的挑战与 机遇、全球视角。这是我们当前面临的重大议题。在当今全球化的背景下，高等教育学历互认不仅是各国教育体系当中的重要环节，更是促进各国教育资源和人才流动的重要桥梁。然而，随着全球化进程的不断加快，高等教育学历互认也面临着前所未有的挑战。由于各国各地区的政府政策、教育体系、法律法规和文化背景的不同，全球高等教育学历互认面临着认证标准差别大、认证过程较繁琐、认证结果难公正等问题，严重影响了学历互认的公平性和有效性，也阻碍了国际间教育资源的流动和人才的交流。通常，挑战与机遇总是并存的，正是这些挑战激发了我们不断的探索和创新的动力。我们欣喜地看到，随着数字教育的快速发展，我们拥有了更多的工具和手段来推动高等教育学历互认的全球化和标准化。例如，区块链技术、人工智能等前沿科技，可以确保学历信息的不可篡改和可追溯性，极大地提升了学历互认的可信度。同时，国际间的合作与交流也为我们提供了更加广阔的视野和更多的机遇。全球各国各地区在学历互认标准上的统一，将为跨境学历互认提供更大的便利。女士们、先生们、朋友们，参加今天会议的嘉宾都是来自各国的专家学者、教育工作者和政策制定者，衷心希望大家共同探讨和分享学历互认的实践经验、成功案例和创新思路，为在全球范围内推动公正透明的学历互认献计献策。让我们凝聚共识，携手前行，保持开放的姿态，拓展创新的思维，开展务实的行动。我坚信，在大家的共同努力下，一定能够有效地推动高等教育学历互认的全球发展，为构建更加公正、透明和高效的教育体系贡献我们的智慧和力量。最后，预祝本次研讨会取得圆满成功，谢谢大家。
Apologies, I'm still here. I'm just having camera issues. Oh, there I am. Okay, all good. Thank you very much, Mr. Daliang, for these introductory remarks. It is really a pleasure to be working together with the China Association of Higher Education and all the other associations united in the Global University Associations Forum. But now to the topic of the webinar. As you will have heard and read already, this webinar is not only an occasion to hear from different experts in the world from across the different world regions about challenges, new developments, and good practice in tackling recognition issues, but it was also developed in the context of the recent issuing of the GUAV's joint statement on the Global Recognition Convention, or rather the UNESCO Global Convention on the Recognition of Qualifications concerning higher education earlier this year. So it would not be a complete webinar if we did not learn more about this exact convention. And who better to enlighten us about this topic than Vanya Gutovic, who is the secretary to the Global Recognition Convention at UNESCO. Vanya, I have already seen you somewhere in the audience, so you are most welcome to step on the virtual stage and tell us more about the Global Recognition Convention, its background, and how it is doing so far. Oh, Vanya has some technical issues. She cannot unmute herself. If the organizers could maybe unmute Vanya's camera and turn her microphone on.
It works
Yeah.
now. Thank you very much, Helena, and sorry for this small technical glitch. Thank you very much for having me. If you don't mind, I would like to share my brief PowerPoint to walk you a little bit through the Global Convention. I would be grateful if you could enable my screen sharing. Perfect. Thank you so much. Bear with me for just one moment. I just want to make sure that you can see my screen.
We can.
Excellent. Let me start out just by giving you a brief overview of what we call UNESCO's global ecosystem for the recognition of qualifications. As you might know, we have 5 regional recognition conventions. We call them the second generation regional conventions, as they are revisions of conventions that were originally developed in the 1970s and 80s. And these regional conventions, they vary in their age and adherence. So ranging from the Lisbon Convention for the European region, which entered into force more than 25 years ago and has nearly universal coverage with 56 states parties, to the most recently adopted convention for the Arab states, which was adopted 2 years ago and is now pending the entry into force. And these regional conventions all promote recognition, mobility, and cooperation within their respective regions, while the Global Convention is the overall framework that promotes this among regions. Just very quickly to give you the background, the Global Convention was adopted in 2019 by UNESCO's General Conference, so it became the first global instrument in higher education. And why is it important today? Well, we have growing enrollments. We have more than 250 million people around the world that are currently enrolled in higher education. Of course, the enrollment rate varies between regions, being as low as 9% in Africa compared to the global average of 42%. We also have growing numbers of internationally mobile students, 6.4 million, which is a number that has more than tripled in the last 20 years and continues to do so. And about half of these students are studying outside their home region. Now, Europe, followed by Asia Pacific, is the main both receiving region and the region for outbound mobility, whereas in other parts of the world, mobility is not at the same rate yet. And we hope that with the Global Convention, this can change, as it really establishes universal principles for the recognition of studies and qualifications, and is meant to help both students and faculty move more easily around the world. Now, the Global Convention is open to all UNESCO member states. There are 194, as well as the Holy See. It entered into force in 2023, so just over 1 year ago. And since then, we have had 2 sessions of the Intergovernmental Conference of the States Parties. And this is the governing body that is responsible for overseeing the implementation of the convention. Most notably, the Intergovernmental Conference adopted the first interim work program for the Global Convention here in Paris 3 months ago, and this will run until the summer of next year. And just to give you a quick overview, there are 5 main areas that we will be focusing on to operationalize the convention, starting with the development of operational guidelines. which is similar to what exists in Europe in terms of the explanatory report of the Lisbon Convention. It is the only model that we have so far. We will also be working on a subsidiary text on the relationship between the Global Convention and the regional conventions, and this will be ready by 2027. Our research agenda focuses on the recognition of refugee qualifications and quality assurance, including transnational education, as well as capacity development and advocacy. And at present, the chairperson of the Intergovernmental Conference comes from Norway, and we have a bureau that includes countries from the different UNESCO regions. And on the slide, you can see that we have 28 states parties to the Global Convention. Europe is slightly dominating the geographical representation, and we're working through our field offices and networks really to increase the number of states parties altogether, but also the regional distribution. So 28 states parties. We're expecting Georgia's instrument of ratification any day now, and we know that there's another 30 countries or so that are in the process. 26 out of the 28 states parties are also parties to one or more of the UNESCO regional conventions. And so you can really see the synergy between the two here, and I'll touch upon that a little bit more later. In terms of the main objectives of the Global Convention, of course, it's to facilitate mobility through international cooperation. The convention respects domestic laws and institutional autonomy. So it does not, it's not prescriptive, and it does not entail automatic recognition, but rather provides an inclusive framework for fair recognition. In terms of the main principles, the convention guarantees individuals' rights to the assessment of their qualifications. This means also, of course, timely and affordable assessment. And in terms of what states parties shall recognize, it's very similar to the regional conventions in terms of recognizing qualifications, giving access to higher education and higher education qualifications, partial studies, and prior learning. We also have non-traditional learning modes, which is really focused in the Global Convention, and unlike so much of the regional conventions, which are, of course, developed at a different time, which are older, and the Global Convention takes into account online, blended, and distance learning, being a child of its time. We also have the recognition of qualifications for refugees and displaced persons, and this is even in cases where documentation is lacking. Of course, all of this is unless substantial differences can be shown, and the Global Convention is the first one that goes a step further to define what substantial difference should mean. States parties are asked to provide information on their higher education systems, qualifications, and quality assurance mechanisms, and of course, establish a national information center. And at the regional level, we have very well functioning networks of national information centers in Europe, Asia Pacific, and most recently, Latin America and the Caribbean. So the convention is implemented through national implementation structures or information centers, networks of these, organizations for accreditation, quality assurance, qualifications frameworks, and recognition, the Intergovernmental Conference, which I briefly mentioned, and of course, the committees of the 5 UNESCO regional conventions. And in terms of the relationship with the regional conventions, as I mentioned, these are implemented in complementarity. So one does not supersede the other, and there's no prerequisite to ratify one before the other. And you can see how these work together in the fact that the heads of the convention committees participate in the work of the Intergovernmental Conference. The committees are also consulted on important decisions made by the Intergovernmental Conference. And of course, the networks of information centers at the regional level are also identified as key implementation structures. When it comes to recognition decisions, the Global Convention is innovative in that it says that states parties should take into account the relevant provisions of the convention when interpreting and applying the regional convention. So if there is a provision in a regional convention that is more favorable to recognition than one in the Global Convention, for example, then it is the one in the regional convention that shall prevail. So we are often asked at UNESCO, why should countries ratify the Global Convention? So what are the benefits? And just to briefly and in a very basic way sum them up, it's of course to facilitate recognition and enable the mobility of students around the world. Also to showcase to the world that countries have strong higher education systems so that they can share their experiences with others and benefit from others' experience. To attract students, cooperation, and exchanges. Also to promote themselves as destinations for learning and excellence. And above all, to also have a say in the decision-making at the global level. And just before concluding, I would like to leave you with a few resources that you might find interesting related to the Global Convention. So we have an article on our website that explains what the benefits of the Global Convention are, how to ratify it and implement it. We have a practical guide to recognition, which you can see a picture of on the left that we developed together with NOKUT a few years ago. And there are also the resolutions of the Intergovernmental Conference. So these are the key decisions related to the Global Convention. Of course, more information on our regional conventions and the model instrument of ratification that countries should submit to UNESCO in order to become states parties. And at the end of last year, we also, UNESCO's Institute for Higher Education in Latin America and the Caribbean, developed a very interesting higher education policy observatory, which includes data from about 150 countries, and it continues to be updated, where you can find different information on their higher education systems and policies using 45 indicators. As you can find information on country profiles, global overviews, and country comparisons. It's a very interesting resource that is rich with information and continues to expand. And you can see the link at the bottom of my screen here, and I'll share it in the chat as well. That's it for me. I hope this short overview was helpful, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vanya, for this short and concise overview of the Global Recognition Convention. While we wait for other questions from the audience coming in, I was actually curious about the complementarity between the conventions, so between the Global Convention and the regional conventions. You did mention some ongoing work there, and as you highlighted, and this is also something that we noted in the joint statement by the GUAF, the Global Convention does not supersede or replace the regional conventions, but really supports them, also because it clearly states that that convention that is more favorable to recognition shall take precedence. I was curious about whether you have any practical examples of the Global Convention supporting the implementation of the regional conventions, maybe through an enhanced focus on certain issues that were already there before with the regional conventions, or maybe new networks that were formed. So how is the Global Convention supporting the regional conventions?
Really, when it comes to the implementation of the Global Convention, we are drawing on the expertise that we have gained through the different mechanisms of the regional recognition conventions. And if I can give you one example of how the Global Convention supports them, the provision on non-traditional learning modes does not exist explicitly per se in the regional recognition conventions, in some of them as they were developed at different times. So we are, when it comes to recognition practices related to non-traditional learning modes, whether it's online, distance, or blended learning, we always encourage countries to use the provisions of the Global Recognition Convention in offering them some guidance in this respect.
Very clear. Thank you very much. We have time for one more question before I hand over to our next speakers. Michael Gebel, my colleague from EUA, the European University Association, would like to know, as you mentioned, 30 parties in the process, are there others to follow by time, or what are main concerns and obstacles for governments in signing up?
Well, yes. So we have a tracker of ratifications where we follow country status, and some are really at the starting phase, other in the middle, and others towards the advanced. So when we talk about the 30, we talk about those that are really advanced in the process. Now, ratifying any convention is, of course, a national matter, depending on country priorities and also on the procedure for doing so. And in many states, it's a process that takes a very long time. that starts with the translation of the convention. And then depending on the national structure, of course, it can take a parliament years to pass it, especially if the state has a federal structure or if it has to go through different provinces, as is the case of Canada, for example. Thank you.
Yes, perfectly understandable. Thank you so much for explaining the history, the current state of play, and a little bit of background functionings of the Global Recognition Convention to us. We will also take more questions from the audience later on, so please everybody don't be shy about posting your questions to Vanya or to any of our other speakers in the chat, and we'll get back to them at a later point. For now, I'm handing over to our next speaker, who is Chiara Finocchietti, who is currently the president of the ENIC-NARIC networks, meaning the European national and also European level recognition information centers. She's also the director of the Italian ENIC-NARIC Center CIMEA. Chiara has therefore special expertise in recognition networks of recognition experts, which is one specific point we raised in the joint statement of the GUAF, which highlights the need for, on the one hand, investment in adequate resources to support recognition, but also the forming of networks of recognition experts to support adequate implementation. So we will be curious to hear from Chiara about the ENIC-NARIC networks and what they can maybe share in terms of good practice. Chiara?
Yes, thanks, Elena. Thanks, first of all, for this invitation, and good afternoon also from my side. I have 5 minutes, so we'll try to, let's say, in 5 minutes to use 1 minute to say who we are, and in 4 minutes to go through your statement, the GUAF statement, which I would like to thank you because it's very interesting. And I would like to pick up 4 keywords according to our experience as European Network of Information Center. So the first point, who we are. We are a network of national information center on recognition of qualification according to the principle of the Lisbon Recognition Convention. We do report to our national competent authority, so Ministry of Education or the other national body. We are established in each of the 56 parties to the LRC, and we can be very different, actually, in typology. We can be within a ministry, we can be an office of the ministry, we can be an independent organization, we can be in a quality assurance agency, in a qualification authority. But what it is important is that we share the same purpose and the same mandate. The purpose is to oversee, promote, and facilitate Lisbon Recognition Convention implementation, that is the recognition convention for the European region, and to provide information and advice on national education system, qualification recognition, and to support academic mobility. So this is our mandate. Now, going through your document, I would like to focus on 4 keywords. The first one is implementation. ENIC-NARIC, the National Information Center in Europe, according to our experience, has been key in supporting consistent implementation and enforcement of the regional convention. We know that legislation is fundamental, but we also know that we need also tools, practices to make certain articles and certain principles work in practice. I make you an example. The Lisbon Recognition Convention speaks about substantial difference, but doesn't define what substantial difference is. This is quoted also in your statement. So in more than 25 years of experience, we are trying to define what a substantial difference between qualification is, just to make an example. The second keyword is professional development. We know that, again, legislation is crucial, but we know that legislation is enforced by people, professionals. And for this, we need skills, competencies, and capacities. In this sense, National Information Center has been played a very important role to support training, capacity building, also in higher education institutions, but not only, also within ENIC-NARIC Center. I can quote an important example of many capacity building projects, but also of of a training that we do that is led by one ENIC-NAREC center, by the Dutch ENIC-NAREC center, that is a common training for all the junior credential evaluators working in the ENIC-NAREC network. And this is very important to have a common ground. The third keyword is cooperation. As you wrote in the statement, we need to establish a network of professionals, a kind of community of practice, if we want to say like this. I can bring you the Italian example. In Italy, we did a micro-credential course for professionals working in higher education institutions. And after this experience of training, there was the need to create something to keep these colleagues connected. And for this reason, we founded the National Association of Credential Evaluators in Italy. And this is, I mean, there are similar experience, network of admission officers in many European countries. So this cooperation between ENIC-NAREC Center and higher education institution, it's very important, but I would say it's very important to have a system-level cooperation between national authorities, higher education institution, ENIC-NAREC, National Information Center, all the actors involved in recognition, of course, with respect of the different remit and mandate. And I would like also to mention that also EUA at the international level, European level, we have a very good cooperation. EUA was part of many ENIC-NAREC activities and projects, for instance, on quality of recognition. We just published a research on this, on quality of recognition in higher education institution, information provision, on self-assessment tool to support quality of recognition procedure. And the last keyword is monitoring. I would say monitoring and taking action. In the European context, we had two monitoring of the Lisbon Recognition Convention with the one ad hoc exercise on recognition of refugees qualification. And I can make you this example. Monitoring was absolutely crucial to take stock on what we were with the implementation of the Lisbon Recognition Convention to take action. Just to make an example, in 2016, an outcome of the first monitoring of the LRC showed that there were very few practices implemented in recognition of refugees qualification without documentation. And according to this element, there was a strong call to action. And after this, many countries implemented practices and enforces the Article 7 of the Lisbon Recognition Convention that is about this. So that's just a simple example of how monitoring, and I would say more generally evidence, data, information are very important to have informed decision and action. So I will stop here and I will give back the floor to the chair, to Elena, back to you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chiara, for this introduction to the ENIC-NAREC networks and for making these fantastic points that link with our statement. Well, actually, we don't have a lot of time left, and we still have a couple of very inspiring speakers uplined. So I will refrain from inviting questions right away, but we will have a section for questions and answers at the end of the webinar. In the meantime, please, everybody post your questions in the chat, and we will get to them later on. I now hand over to our second speaker, who is joining us from a different corner of the world, from Colombia. I invite, therefore, to the floor Elizabeth Bernal Gamboa, who is the Secretary General of the Colombian University Association, or ASCUN, also our kind host of the webinar today. She's also the Executive Secretary of the Latin American and Caribbean Higher Education Area in LACES. So different corner of the world, and she will also talk about a slightly different topic than what Chiara mentioned, because we want to get different perspectives, address different challenges, share different good practices. And Elizabeth will talk about the role of university associations. So Elizabeth, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Haline. I want to share my screen with a little presentation. Okay, I'm very pleased with the organization of this space to review these challenges and opportunities in recognition. I know that this is a very crucial issue because we need to advance in the recognitions because it's important not also for individuals looking to expand their educational and professional horizons, but it's also essential to foster student mobility and international collaboration between academic institutions. So we also are, we welcome the joint position of the Global University Associations Forum, GUAF, on the UNESCO Global Convention on the Recognition of Qualifications Concerning Higher Education, which reminds all of us of this important mission and offers very important suggestions to support these processes. We, of course, I want to say thanks for to all the associations that worked together that make this declaration a reality. So in the case of Latin America, 23 countries adopted the new convention on the recognition of studies, degrees, and diplomas on higher education in 2019. These regional conventions, these regional conventions enter into force in October in 2022 with the ratification of the instruments by Uruguay, Cuba, Grenada, and Santa Sede. In our case, in Colombia, we have two processes, and the regional agreement has already passed approval in the 4 steps required in our country to become law. And in this moment, only is missing the presidential sanction, and it will become law. But the World Convention still has 1 step to go before it's approved by the president. We hope we can have this law soon, but it's important, as Guaf said to all of us, that it's not the law is not the only step for to be this a reality. We need to go through the law and advance in the instruments that that could help us to bring this reality. Also, in this year, in February, in Cuba, Havana, the group of they are leading this proposal presents the first year of work of the new regional convention for Latin America and the Caribbean. They present to us 2 new publications. One is the basic guidelines for the recognition of Venezuelan academic degrees and diplomas, because you know the important situation of Venezuela for our region. And the second publication was the feasibility study for the implementation of the title supplement in Latin America and the Caribbean. In this meeting, also, the authorities of the committee were renewed, leaving Ecuador at the head of the vice presidents and Uruguay for the second time in the presidency. And the network of national recognition structures was established here in the region. But we thought that, however, there is still no clarity on the role that university associations can play in these processes. Even in the publications that I mentioned before, the UNESCO, the ESALC specifically, make some suggest to this process, but they don't mention the national associations, universities, and what is the role that we can play in that. So in this case, I want to put the emphasis in the enlaces, the Latin American and Caribbean space of higher education. In this space, in this moment, this space is made up of 12 important university associations in 2 kinds of associations: regional and sub-regional associations and national associations with an important leadership in the region. This is the case as we have the National Association of Universities and Institutions of Higher Education, ANUYES from Mexico, the National Association of Directors of Federal Institutions of Higher Education and DIFES from Brazil, the National Inter-University Council SIN from Argentina, the Colombian Association of University, ASCUN, the National Council of University from Nicaragua, the Cuban University System, Association of Universities Montevideo Group, the Andean University Council, the Union of Universities of Latin America and the Caribbean, UDUALC, the Central American University Higher Council, SUCA, the Latin American Caribbean Continental Organization of Students, OCLAE, Universities Caribbean, UC, and the Federation of University Teachers Union of South America, FECIDUAS, and the Confederation of Workers of the University of the Americas. So as you see, there is a very important spaces that can support this process, and it's important to know how we can support this important recognition. So briefly, the university associations have a fundamental role in this recognition process. This is some initiatives that we can play in this process. The Association of Universities could be a catalyst for change and facilitators of collaboration between educational institutions in different countries. We can promote the standards of quality and transparency. We can promote in the harmonization of higher education system at the international level. We can support also creating and promoting digital tools and platforms that facilitate the verification and validation of degrees and diplomas. Of course, in all the processes in awareness and training, and also, and very important, promoting diversity and inclusion in our higher education institutions. And of course, we can contribute with the recommendations that appear in the WAF joint position. We can support them or talk with our governments about the importance of investing in infrastructure and recognition resources, promoting the professional development of the personnel involved in the recognition. We can support the creation or support the already existing networking with the recognition professionals, and also monitoring the progress in the implementation of recognition conventions. So there is a brief message that it's very important to develop the role that the university associations can play in this space. And of course, at WAF, we can continue to advance in dialogues, support, and initiatives that allow us to make this global recognition a reality. So that's all for me in this moment. I want to introduce an expert person from UDUALT who want to share with us also some few words. So Arlen, please.
Greetings. Thank you for this space. Today I'm representing Dr. Escalante, Secretary General of UDUALT, to share with you a brief message. We face several challenges in Latin American and Caribbean region regarding the recognition of qualifications. This included lack of trust in other university systems, absence of common criteria, and reliance on bilateral agreements that hide regional recognition. Additionally, the role of governments is crucial in influencing or facilitating the recognition of degrees. It is important to recognize the degree recognition should not be limited to academic purposes, but should also encompass professional goals. We must discuss establishing regional recognition to foster integration and cooperation while respecting academic autonomy and freedom. University play a crucial role, and we must acknowledge good practices that promote dialogue. Furthermore, higher education institutions need to adapt to the technological advances and virtual educations. Recognizing credit requires transparent and trustworthy process that connects diverse perspectives without compromising educational quality and context. Regional integration offers an opportunity to strengthen our ties and maximize our collective potentials. I appreciate this space for reflections.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth and Arlene, for your introduction to the situation in Latin America and the Caribbean, and especially to Elizabeth for her remarks about the role of university associations. We hope, of course, that we can play our part in tackling recognition challenges and contributing to smoother and fairer recognition processes. And I think the common theme from the presentations we have had so far is the importance of networks and open and transparent collaboration and looking in the same direction. Up next is an expert from yet another part of the world. I welcome to the virtual stage Walid Salameh, who is a senior consultant at the Association of Arab Universities and also the Vice President for Academic Affairs at Princess Sumaya University for Technology. Mr. Salameh, we welcome you to the stage for your presentation. There seem to be slight technical issues going on because we can see Dr. Salameh but not yet hear him, but I'm sure it will be fixed very soon.
Afternoon.
Yes, now.
Do you hear me?
Yes, it's very low, but perhaps if you start.
Sure. Thank you, and thanks for this invitation. In fact, it is an honor to me to represent the Associations of Arab Universities, ARU, at this course webinar discussing the global challenges and opportunities and the recognition of a qualification in higher education. As all know that recognition of the qualifications is a pivotal in fostering international mobility and enhancing the quality of education and ensuring that the academic and professional achievements of individuals are acknowledged across borders. From the perspective of the ARU, there are several key challenges and opportunities we must address. Firstly, the Arab world as a challenges. The Arab world, in fact, encompasses a vast array of educational systems, each with its own standards, curricula, and perhaps accreditation processes as well. This diversity, while enriching, poses a challenge of standardization and mutual recognition of equality. This is the first challenge and the first problem that we are facing in the region. Secondly, in fact, different countries in the Arab world have varying regulations and policies regarding the recognition of foreign qualifications. It's a real problem that we are facing in the higher educational institutions in the Arab world. These regularity barriers can impede the mobility of students and professionals and hinder international collaborations. Thirdly, the third challenge, which is related to the quality assurance, as ensuring the consistent quality across institution is a significant challenge to our perspective. Variations in international quality can affect the perception and acceptance of qualifications from different universities. Now, let's move to the opportunities that we do have, in fact. Firstly, the development and implementation of what's called by regional qualification frameworks, such as the Arab qualification framework that we are working on nowadays, can facilitate the recognition process by providing a common references point for qualifications across member states in the Arab countries. The second opportunity that we have to utilize on, in fact, the digitalization, which does leveraging, in fact, digital technologies to create comprehensive databases and verification systems that can streamlining the recognition processes and making it more efficient and transparent. For example, blockchain's technology, for example, can be used to verify and authenticate the academic credentials securely. The third opportunity that we can talk about is the international collaborations by strengthening the partnerships with global accreditation bodies and international organizations that can enhance the mutual recognition of qualifications. Fourthly, the last one, we believe that the capacity building is very crucial and very important. By investing in capacity building initiatives to train academic and administrative staff on the international qualifications and recognition processes can improve the overall effectiveness and reliability of these systems. From the Arab associations of the university role, this organization, the association, in fact, is committed to address these challenges and capitalizing on the opportunities that we have been actively involved in various initiatives aimed at enhancing the recognition and the recognitions of qualifications. Firstly, the Arabic Qualification Framework project that I've mentioned a while ago, we are working toward the development of a comprehensive Arabic Qualification Framework that aligns with international standards and facilitating easier recognition of a qualification within the Arab world and beyond. The second role and initiative that we are working with is collaborative projects. The ARU has been part of collaborative projects with international partners to create robust mechanisms for quality assurance and accreditation. The third initiatives and role is the digital platform. We are exploring the implementation of digital platform for the verification and authentication of academic credentials, ensuring security and reducing the risk of fraud. The last initiatives that we are believing on is conducting and convening workshops and the training regularly to train certain programs and conducted by senior experts to equip institutions with knowledge and tools necessary for effective qualifications and recognitions. In conclusion, let me wrap up the role and the initiatives of the associations. The recognition of a qualification in higher education is a complex yet critical endeavor. By addressing the challenges and leveraging the opportunities, we can create a more integrated and efficient global educational landscape. The association is dedicated to playing a pivotal role in this transformative process, ensuring that the academic and professional achievement of individuals are recognized and valued globally. That's it from our side, but let me mention we can contribute in building capacities by conducting different workshops that would equip the individuals and the institutions by necessarily tools for effective qualifications and recognition. That's all from the associations. Hopefully that I gave you the framework of our role and initiative in that regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Salameh. What you mentioned in terms of the challenges and opportunities in the Arab world is certainly something that also rings true in my own, that is the European context. I think we can all concur that the different legal and national frameworks pose a challenge, but can also be an opportunity, and that we are all rather hopeful and curious about the potential of digital technologies in supporting recognition and also verification processes. Time is flying, so I will now hand over right away to the next speaker, but still encourage everybody to post their questions in the chat if you have not done so already. Our final speaker for the day is Mohammed Saiful Bahri bin Yusuf, who is the AUN expert on qualifications, framework, systems, and management. AUN stands for the ASEAN University Networks. And he is also the director of the Center for Development of Academic Excellence at the University SAINS in Malaysia. So if I may hand over the virtual floor to Mohammed Saiful Bahri bin Yusuf.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. All right, so I'm going to share some insight from our side, from the ASEAN region, and based on our involvement in the collaborative work, we call it Kalohia. So from this experience, we have identified a few things that are quite interesting to be shared today to enhance our global higher education through cross recognitions of qualification. But before that, let me just introduce you what is Kalohia. This is something that we call it measuring comparing achievement learning outcome in higher education Asia. And then the main purpose is about internalizations of higher education institutions through a series of interrelated measures that we did for improving recognition of higher education degree. That's why we are going to share our region experience related to this, and hopefully the insight will be somehow useful for others to learn. And then these are the partners that we have across the ASEAN, together with the European partners from 5 countries, and in total we are 13 countries involved in this project to enhance the recognitions of qualification throughout the ASEAN region. And I think we have talked a lot about the global conventions of the recognition. This is just a summary that what I can understood from the 8 universal principle that was mentioned by Vanja previously. All right, so I'm going to link our experience with all these 8 principles later on. But before we go further, I would like to share the 4 key utilities of recognition of qualification that we learned throughout the Kalohia project. And there are things that we call comparability. This is something that we learn when we go across the countries with different systems of education, different standards compared to the ASEAN qualification reference framework. It seems that the comparability of qualification from different education systems can be assessed as equivalent. These are very important, either in terms of the level of training, learning outcome, or even the quality of the education. So there's a comparability. The second utility that we learn is about compatibility. This is something that we found that the qualification from different education systems can fit into others' frameworks. That's why in this region we are very we have put a lot of efforts to ensure that the ASEAN qualification reference framework is fitting well with the national qualification framework in the regions for each of the country. And if you have time, you can go to the IUN quality assurance website. You can see there are a few reports that are already published that catering a few countries that have been cross-ref between the national framework with the regional framework. You can look at it if you are interested later on. And then the third utility is about transferability. It means that the ability of the qualifications and whatever credits that we counted can be moved and accepted across different education institutions or even employment sectors within or beyond ASEAN countries. It's something that we learned that it's quite important to consider transferability of the qualifications into different contexts of systems. And then the last but not least is the fourth utility, that verifiability. It means that the assurance that qualifications are authentic, credible, and can be confirmed through reliable and transparent process. So we have learned that all these key utility is very important to enhance and to facilitate recognition of qualifications. And if we map to the 8 principles, so basically it's about this. The comparability is about transparent and trust. Compatibility about the respect for diversity and good faith in whatever decision we make. Transferability is how the right to assessment can be transferred to further education or even job opportunity, and how that eradications of fraudulent practices can improve the transferability of any qualification to be recognized in different settings. And for the reliability, it's about reliable information and the applicant responsibility and rights on whatever they provide must be accurate information. So I think that's very well aligned with what we found from the Kalohia and with the universal principle that was mentioned in convention. I think this is quite interesting. And I would like to share a little bit more beyond than the key utilities. It's something that key challenges we found based on our experience when we did for the past almost 3 years. We found that there's a diverse education system. I think that this is something that was mentioned quite consistently by the speakers as well. The implementation barriers, because there are so much of obstacles that is a bit challenging for us to implement the whole convention, either regional or global conventions, because of bureaucratic lack of resources, a different level of commitment, and so on and so forth from different countries. I think there's something that is very real. And then technology disparity as well, because the role of technology in the recognition process is very important. And we found that there is a digital divide among within the countries and between the countries as well. Therefore, it's kind of hindrance for equitable access to the benefits of qualification recognitions. And last but not least, about the key challenges is the cultural and linguistic differences. That we found that in ASEAN, we have so many languages. I think that the region as well, but we are more diverse in that sense. So those are something, the key challenges that we found throughout this project. And at the same time, we also look at the key opportunities. Even though there are challenges, but there are key opportunities. For example, if we do it properly, all these regional or global conventions on recognition of qualification, it will enhance mobility. Definitely, I think it was mentioned by the speaker as well. There is something that global collaboration, we can do it together as one. And we can mobilize academics, students, even academic staff and administrative staff across the globe and across the countries, inter-regional or within the region, all right? And it will put a lot of benefits on in terms of the economic and the societal developments. And the quality assurance can promote the development of robust quality assurance across the international standards. And maybe the last point that we learned from what we have gone through so far is about what are the strategic action that we can do to enhance the recognition of qualification. One is somehow we mentioned previously by previous speakers about capacity building. And Kalohia is an example of the capacity building that link the European partners and ASEAN university network so that we can work together to improve the whole ecosystem of recognition of qualification. On a technological solution, I think with the AI, with all this advancement, it will take place and will further facilitate the cross-recognitions of qualification. The policy harmonization is also important because we need to advocate for that. And then stakeholder engagement, whereby we have engaged so many stakeholders during the project to improve the higher education qualifications recognition. And in summary, I think there's a key utilities that we need to consider. We need to address the key challenges that was mentioned. And then the key opportunities are also there instead of the key challenges. But the most important is to tap on the key strategic actions for the recognition of qualification higher education. I think that's all from me for a brief summary, what we did, our insight from the real project that we are almost completing soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for this presentation. It seems like a really interesting project, and I'm sure people would like to learn more about it. So if you could post a link to the project in the chat, I'm sure people would be very interested in that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, we are over time, so I'm afraid we have come to the end of the webinar, but it would be rude to close the webinar without taking at least one more question from the audience. And I would like to take a pragmatic approach to this section of the program. There is a question in the chat. Do you think that it is useful to learn from the experiences from the implementation of the regional conventions? And I would like to ask one of our speakers to just give very brief thoughts on this question. And basically, whoever opens the microphone first gets to answer the question. Yes, Chiara.
Yes, maybe just very quickly, I would say absolutely yes. Also, and I cannot speak for the other, but I feel we are very much on the same line. And I also would like to share that actually UNESCO is working already in this direction, because before the extraordinary meeting of the Global Recognition Convention earlier in March this year, there was a meeting of President of Regional Convention Committee and of Regional Network of Information Centers. So actually, and we also would like to thank UNESCO for this. We are working exactly in this direction. So thanks for this question.
And thank you very much, Chiara, for adding your thoughts about this indeed quite important question, because there is, of course, so much to be learned from the implementation of the regional recognition conventions. Thank you, everybody, to the speakers, to our hosts, to the representatives from the China Association of Higher Education for hosting us, for giving us your insights, for asking questions and participating. I hope you took something out of this webinar. And since we have recorded it, you are also very much encouraged to rewatch and share it with your colleagues once the recording is out. I have just right now also posted a link to the website of the Global University Associations Forum in case you would like to know more about this forum, about its activities, and a little bit of its history. Thank you again. I will not keep you any longer, but I hope to see you again very soon online or maybe even in person.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
这个呢，
好，
我们倒是可以弄一个简报，比
对
护理